Hey everybody, it's Keylime here with another video. This time I'm going to be talking gem matching strategies. So in this video I really want to cover kind of what makes the difference between somebody that's playing extremely well and somebody that's not playing necessarily as well. You can be using the same team but with two different players behind the wheel. One player might be taking advantage of all the different fun gem matching strategies that you can do to have the most effective output for a team, and somebody else might not be taking the best advantage of what's going on. They might not be matching gems defensively, they might not anticipate storms properly, they might not be aware of like multi-step 4 or 5 matches you could be making. So I really wanted to create a video that's going to help you understand where 4 or 5 matches can potentially be, trying to like brush up your skills on how you can be doing multi-step 4 or 5s, how you can be using storms to anticipate where gems are going to be coming down, and how to defensively match gems. So with that all being said, let's jump in to some scenarios. This is the most obvious pattern to be looking for in Gems of War. I'm sure you've seen it trillions of times. It's this guy. It's your normal hole in the middle gem that you can slide into it. You can find this pattern vertically, you can find it horizontally, but it's the 3 gems with an open spot that you can fill in just by pulling a gem up, down, left, right, whatever it may be. Most basic pattern, so keep your eye out for that. So this is a fun scenario that we're looking at here, and a great example of some things to look at when you're playing Gems of War. So there's a 4 match here, right? You can see this pattern, 1, 2, 1, 1. So you see this little broken L thing. I can obviously pull this here and get a 4 match. I've also got this thing here, which is the same pattern in reverse. So both of these are cool, right? They're both the same? Well, no, they're not both the same. So if I pull this one this way, I'm going to get some random gems to come down, likely yellow, and there's no other matches that I'm going to get as a result of pulling this gem this way. However, if I pull this gem this way, I'm going to have this yellow come down and then make this match. So if I'm pulling this way, I'm only getting purple. However, if I'm pulling this way, I'm getting the purple and the yellow. So this is kind of an example of being efficient with your gem matching. They're both the same in terms of the purple 4-5 match. I'm going to be getting an extra turn no matter which direction I go. However, there's a smarter option to be taking. So whenever you see multiple options for 4 or 5 matches, think about what the impact of the resulting gem falls are going to be. In this case, this is less optimal than this. This is the right move for that reason. This is another 4 or 5 match pattern here. So whenever you see that there's gems, 2 gems here, 2 gems here, and there's something in between them, something you always need to think about is how can I remove this gem so that these 4 gems all touch each other. So in this instance, I can pull the purple down and then make all of this touch. That's another example of a 4 or 5 match you want to keep your eyes out for. Here's a fun one. Do you see the 4 or 5 match on this screen? You can pause the video if you want. However, the other pattern that you want to be looking for is this one, where you see this little bridge, if you will, where you've got 2 below, 2 above. So whenever you see this, your goal is to look below the 2 hanging that are above and figure out if there's any way I can make these touch. I want to bring these down just 1 so I can get them touching into there. So if I draw this down, no good, because this is going to pull this one down and these 2 down. So doing this move, not so good. However, there's an option if I pull it this way, I'll actually get this 4 or 5 match right there. So whenever you see this pattern, draw your eyes downwards and see is there some way I can get these 2 to drop into these 2 slots. So this is kind of another pattern that you want to be looking for. Another pattern to make sure you're keeping in mind is this pattern, this big L pattern. So if you pull this one over, this is creating a 5 match. So at a quick glance, you're not seeing any traditional patterns, but this is very much one of the traditional patterns. So make sure you keep your eyes out for this one. This is another pattern that I want to talk about. So we talked before about whenever you see vertically that there's 4 matches going on this way where you've got 2 gems and 2 gems with something in between. The same thing can happen vertically. So we've got the same scenario here. There's 2 and there's a space. And we happen to see that there's a bunch of red above it. So if we could get this red to slide right here, we've got ourselves a 5 match. And lo and behold, there's something here. So that's another pattern you want to keep your eyes out for. This 4 or 5 match, I think, is what I call the alley-oop. So I don't know if you see it. Do you see the 4-5 match somewhere? We see this pattern, but obviously this pattern doesn't have anything below it, so there's nothing I can do there. I'm not really seeing anything obvious, right? I can't pull out these skulls to make these browns touch, so what can I possibly do? Well, something else that you have to pay attention to is this alley-oop match thing. So there's 2 purples down here, there's a purple here, there's a purple here, and there's a bunch of red in the way. But if I actually pull this here, this purple and this purple are going to fall on down to here and get myself a 4 match. So this alley-oop style of match is something else that you need to pay attention to. Another pattern that I want to quickly draw attention to is the plus shape pattern. So obviously if I'm looking at blues, I see this 4 match here, I see this 5 match here. But I have Doomglaive here, which converts brown into Doomskulls. And if I look at brown into Doomskulls, I see some alignment here, but this is the one that I want to draw attention to. I think a lot of people might forget that this little plus shape here is actually a 5 match. So whenever you're trying to look for 5 matches out there and you're dealing with converty type troops, just remember that this shape here is a 5 match. One other pattern that you want to be aware of is the L-shaped pattern that we talked about before, but sometimes you can make it happen versus it existing. So I see this one's here, but what we can do is pull this blue here and then force an L pattern this way. So when we look at what we've got on the board here, you can probably see a pattern that we've already talked about. We've got our line here, but there's no real way to make it line up. However, you can use someone like Apothecary to make it line up. So if we were just to do this, you can get your extra turn that way. Something else that you want to keep in mind is that storms are a thing. So here you can see that we've got a nice dark storm going and we've got this kind of a setup and we have a way of making gems fall between it. So sometimes when you pull it here, you'll get the gem alignment that you want. I recommend this normally in non-emergency scenarios where you're just trying to be a little more efficient, potentially sneak out an extra turn. Or if you're in a dire emergency and you need to make something happen and there's nothing else for you to do on the board. So just remember, when there's a storm running and you have a setup like this, you can kind of roll them dice and see what happens. This here is a pattern that I think a lot of people get wrong, which is this pattern. So when you see your normal 4 match pattern, you might be compelled to pull this way, or this way. However, you should be able to pull it this way. And this is creating a 5 match versus a traditional 4 match. So if I pull this down, that's 4. However, if I pull this in, that's actually going to be a 5. So always remember that this T shape is a 5 match, and that is better from a mana generation perspective. Now obviously you can potentially want to pull this down or this up if you're looking to cause something above it to react a certain way. However, if you're thinking about purely how much mana can I generate with a single move, pulling this in is always the ideal state. For this specific board, there's no reason why I would pull this up or this down. I would pull this in every single time because I'm looking for more mana versus less. That all being said, we also have another 4 match down here. So the last thing that you would normally want to do is match below first, because if I match below first, it's possible I could mess up a 4 or 5 match that is above it. In this instance, that's pretty safe. However, there's other instances where if I took this first, I'm going to break a 4 or 5 match that's above it. So always remember, when you're doing your 4 or 5 matches, kind of scan downwards for the most part. You want to be matching the ones above first and then the ones at the bottom second. And if there's one in the middle, you want to match that third, or second. So always scan top down, make your matches from the top down. So that way I can grab this one and this one. This is an example where let's just pretend I want brown mana, because I do want brown mana. And I see that there's brown mana on the board over here. What is the right brown mana to take? I could take this one, I could take this one. Well, you have to be thinking about, again, what the resulting impacts of my gem matches are going to be. So if I pull this one down, I'm going to get hit with a skull because now this skull is going to be sitting here and these 2 skulls are going to be sitting there. So then the AI is going to hit me with the skull. This is not an ideal match. This is also not an ideal match for another reason, because if this falls down, then these reds are going to fall down as well, and they've got a 4 match of these. So not only am I going to take a skull if I do this, I'm actually going to get hit with the skull and they're going to get an extra turn because they're going to be able to get this red situation here. So if I'm looking for brown mana, I might quickly decide to just do this and end up causing a big problem for myself. However, I can just as readily take this and be okay. So let me show you why this is a bad idea. That could have all been avoided if I had just taken the other brown gem. So this is a classic scenario of defensive gem matching that I want to highlight. So they have Moonrabbit here who's ready to cast, and this is converting all blues to yellows. And you can see that this is a nice little juicy pot of stuff there for this Moonrabbit to chew on. So when I end my turn, I want to make sure that there's nothing like this left over for them to try and take. And I have a few options of what I can do, and of course I could just take this itself. But the most important thing when I see something like this is to make sure that I don't end my turn with them having that. So now that I've created this scenario, fortunately I have this. And we can see right now I'm safe. So this is aligned and this is aligned, but if he casts Moonrabbit right now, I'm not going to take anything back in return. They're just going to get a little bit of mana, but I'm not going to enable them to do an extra turn. So let me show that here. So as you can see, by me being strategic about how I was moving my gems around the board, I prevented this team from really just starting their crazy amounts of loops. I could have been doing other things, but for the purposes of this video, I wanted to show you that you have to be paying attention to what these guys can do. If you set them up to be doing bad stuff, you're setting yourself up to take advantage of that state. So always be aware of the troops that are out there. Make sure you're being defensive about what you're looking at, what you're matching, and don't give them the alignment that they want when you're giving up your turn. So this is a scenario that I think is pretty interesting to talk about, because when you're in this kind of a setup, you might be a little confused or scared or not sure of what you should be doing here. So here we've got a Tina that's got a good amount of armor, and if you know anything about Tina, it's adding 50% of its armor to skull damage, so I'm very susceptible to skull damage in this scenario, and there's a lot of kind of almost skull matches all over the place. So if I'm doing any kind of gem match here, I'm probably almost certainly going to give them a skull match. Like this looks a little safe, this looks a little safe. But for the most part, if I'm changing around some gems up here, I'm probably going to end up giving this person a skull match. So I have the ability to do Apothecary to try and create a loop of some kind. However, there's no 4/5s that I can do by converting something, so I'm not able to use Apothecary. However, I've got a weapon that has the entangling effect, so I can entangle this troop. So actually, a completely viable move to be doing here is actually creating a problem with skulls, but entangling this troop so they can't do anything to do anything about it. Also, what's fun about the AI is that they love matching skulls, so even though they're entangled, they're going to match skulls anyway. So actually casting Doomglaive in this scenario is a very safe move to do. It's going to do a little bit of damage, and then it's going to put the AI in a state where they can't hurt me with the skulls that are on the board, and it's going to force them to be wasting turns on matching skulls where I can then be trying to do other fun things. So you see he's immediately going for the skulls and I'm still completely fine. And knowing that they're going to go for skulls again, I'm going to go ahead and leave this here because I want them to keep matching skulls. I don't care because this person's entangled and I know they're going to do it. So I can focus on trying to do other things while they do this. Now we've got other alignments that we can be doing to start getting ourselves some mana. And now if I look at Apothecary, I can be turning some things into more brown, so I have better opportunities of getting setups with my Doomglaive. And now we've got the alignment that we want on our Doomglaive. And now we just need to kill this guy, which is as easy as that. So that's an example of how you can kind of do what I call AI abuse. I created a problem for the AI because I entangled somebody that is normally going to do a lot of skull damage back to me and left a bunch of skulls for them to take. So by doing that, I'm basically stopping any progress that that team is going to make because now they're so preoccupied with matching skulls, and I can just start matching gems in other capacities and be totally safe. So hopefully watching all of those different scenarios kind of helped you understand why somebody can play the same team but not necessarily have the same outcomes. When you're doing things like guild wars or events, those little efficiencies that I just talked about are things that are really going to make or break your success, especially at the higher end of the game. So always keep in mind, always think a little bit more. Don't just casually do stuff when it really matters. Take a little bit of extra time and be extremely considerate of what patterns are out there and how you could be taking advantage of the board. So this is Keylime signing off, as always, and make sure you like, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. Okay, bye.